Next every song will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. Still the greatest treasure remains for those who gladly choose you now. One more time. One day every tongue will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. Still the greatest treasure remains for those who gladly choose you now. Now is the time to worship. Now is the time to give Lord. Just as you are to worship. Just as you are before your God. Now for something quite different, toward the back, 106. And as we get into traditional stuff, if I stray from the notation that you know, or the timing on the page, it has a lot to do with syncopating a song that traditionally is not syncopated. No six. Just a closer walk with me. Jesus is my plea. Then walking close to me. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I will be satisfied as I walk and be close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Jesus is my plea. Walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. In this world of toil and sin, if I falter, Lord, who can? With me, thy mighty child. None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Friend, Jesus is my plea. Walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. My people like this, time for me will be no more. God, shall we say to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore. Just a closer walk with thee. Grant me, Jesus is my plea. Walking close to you. That's got some good little patterns in it. We could get some drums going on that.
Aaron,
Yeah. You got a
we
story?
watched the documentary on OETA where Henry Gates traced the history of Black gospel music and just showed how it developed and how it intertwined with church life and civil rights events. And this was one of the ones that the early singers gave their spin on this music. And it's really something to hear.
Is it, you can stream it through PBS?
Yeah. It's really worth.
What is it called?
Gospel,
Just gospel.
just gospel.
Mhm.
It's
Let me
a
look again.
3-part or 4-part. That's the wrong thing, yeah. The first one is really good.
Yeah, it's got a lot of good stuff. Okay, how about 96? There's a couple of songs that they've got like quite a range. Because the early 20th century stuff, late 19th century stuff, they start, some of them start low and get pretty high, so. Let's sing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up, let me stand. My faith on heaven, faith on land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. So I know there's a bunch of dotted notes that I'm doing like holes, right? Is that what I'm doing, Brandon? Did y'all learn it the way I did, or this is the guitar way? But y'all adapted to it for yourself, so we're gonna keep going with it.
It's a new song for me.
My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Some may dwell where these abound. My prayer, my aim is higher ground. Let me up and let me stand. By faith on heaven, stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, let my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, though Satan's darts at me are hurled, for faith has caught the joyful sound, the song of saints on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven, stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Are we on the fourth? Yeah. I want to scale the utmost high and catch a gleam of glory bright. Still I pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand. By faith on heaven, stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, when I be on higher ground.
Taking it down there, it gets really low in the baseball.
I'm always thinking about the altos.
Yeah.
Did you find it? Did
I
you
found
find
it
it?
on the last note.
Disregarding the bases, that's what I'm all about. Just being for yourself. I mean, it definitely easily could have played it in D, so that might probably be good again sometime. So I'm coming around, not putting any young people on the spot. I am, it makes me feel young to do this.
There you go.
That is not enough drink, sir.
And
We know what these are for. We're all. Whoops. Yeah, I can bend them. MCC jar, what is in that? Is that? No. Air. Air doesn't pay the bills, but we are a small but mighty congregation. We have a lot to be thankful for. We're thankful for this physical space. And we give so that the work continues. We're grateful for our local community and the things that we're able to be involved in to make this a better place for everyone. We're grateful for MCC and the global work that happens through that organization. We're excited to hear more about that from Jene today. Amen. Amen. Okay, I want to not have a conversation. So I'll say if you want to speak the name of Next Benedict, and if you don't know that name, then what I would suggest is we can have sort of a private conversation. It could derail our plan for the service if we go into trying to catch everyone up, because it's a very evolving situation there in Owasso High School. But we do speak their name. And I had the opportunity to speak their name in my classroom on Thursday. I think what I want to say from my experience as an educator, because there's video that you can watch in the hospital. That's mostly what I've watched. I haven't watched some of the other. There's mom who, is referred to as mom, but is also is grandma. And in the interview in the hospital, mom is using she, her pronouns, and I didn't hear names, but because they're just having a private conversation with police. But pronouns is something that comes up a lot in the conversations like that. And it just got me thinking, and I just want to share with you that school is a great place. It's the perfect place to try names and pronouns. And I would say well over 9 out of 10 students, that's where new names and pronouns start at school. I've had students that I've worked with who've had very difficult times at home. And school has been much more accepting, and home has been very, very difficult. And I think we tend to concentrate on that. But I think what I saw in that video with Next and Mom is what I've seen before that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, and that is that students often have like a measure of patience with the people closest to them at home that everyone else doesn't really deserve. And it's for good reason. When you spend 12 years together or more, and then things start to change, like names and pronouns, that can be very difficult. And I've just been around a lot of students who are very patient with mom or dad or aunt and uncle and grandma and grandpa, whatever, people at home. Chelsea and I went to a memorial last summer, and we all knew Angel as Angel. And Angel never indicated that there was strife at home, because that wasn't a name that was used at home. And so I've just had this kind of soft place for mom, because in the obituary, before really the news was nationwide, the birth name was used. And then mom did this thing and apologized after everything went viral, and apologized for using that name and promised to use next for future reference, including like memorial stones and those kinds of things. And I thought that was something that no one was really asking her to do, as far as I'm concerned. But we do speak that name, and much more is going to come to light, I'm sure. But it's just further kind of down a rabbit hole of of absurdity in the state that we live in, as it relates to particular elected leaders and our education system. 45 is next. 45. I think we're jumping this. Actually, the text at the bottom says spiritual. The arrangement is 78. I feel like Richard, do you have a connection to this song?
No, I've heard it, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with it, but I don't
feel
have
like-
any background on it.
For some reason in my memory, I have a memory of you like requesting this song.
Very possible. But
So this is one that starts low and gets high. So I tried to find a good key. Down there toward the bottom, that last line, I mean, there one note and the next note are like more than an octave apart. So that's some pretty cool gymnastics that we get to do. In the morning, when I rise, in the morning, when I rise, in the morning, when I rise, it's a dream. It's a dream. Every day. Just you may have all this energy. Not all midnight was my dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. It's in me dream. In me dream. Just you may have all this in me. Just about the break of day. Just about the break of day. Just about the break of day. Give me dream. Give me dream. Cause give me dream. Cause you may have all this world. Give me dream. Oh, when I come to die. Oh, when I come to die. Oh, when I come to die. Give me dream. Cause you give me cause you may have all this. Give me dream.
29 is more familiar, but it is true to what I said. I do remember this song before George, but we have done it before. And I do like it quite a lot. You are all we have. You give us what we need. Our lives are in your hands, oh God. Our lives are in your hands. You are all we have. You give us what we need. Our lives are in your hands, oh God. Our lives are in your hands. You all we have. You give us what we need. Our lives are in your hands, oh Lord. Our lives are in your hands. All we have. You give us what we need. Our lives are in your hands, oh Lord. Our lives are in your hands. Thank you for going on that journey with me.
You're late.
I'm late.
I've been in the back.
It was so wonderful when Ralph gave us that message about MCC and took us back to the history of how it began for Mennonites and what it has meant to our little Christian space in the world through the years. And it just made me want to think about MCC again, like I used to when the kids and I were studying together. And sometimes we would have lessons because the MCC publications are just terrific. And so they made good curriculum for our kids' time. And they always brought us a picture of people in the world who were walking in the way of Jesus, and it's the way they did it. So I went back to some of those publications, and there usually is a stack of them on that little shelf in the corner that's available for church members to take. And I don't know what it would cost to actually have subscriptions enough for each family in our church to receive those. But this this publication that comes out quarterly is just an amazing account of how Mennonites are acting in the name of Jesus around the world. It has pictures, it has excellent writing, excellent editing, And it's just something that we all should access if we can. So what I have learned so far about the kinds of work that MCC does today is that there are four main ways that MCC addresses giving God's love to human beings in the world and helping people. One is the way they began, with just relief. Those people that were starving in Ukraine needed somebody to help them with food. I mean, there was an immediate, concrete need for relief from what their human situation was. They were helpless to help themselves out of that situation. And so their brothers and sisters in the Mennonite group in North America and maybe some other places contributed too. I'm not sure if there were MCC, if there were Mennonite groups in other parts of the world that also contributed that first time. But they said, okay, here's some hungry people. We have a connection with them through the God we love. And so let's do something. And they got very efficient and gave some food to some people that were hungry. So MCC still does a lot of that. And if we pay much attention as prosperous, well-fed Americans to the whole world, it isn't hard to see that there are still plenty of hungry people in the world that need exactly the same kind of help. They need somebody to come with emergency food. A lot of times this is during a war where they live, immediately after a war where food is not available, at times of national disaster. And of course, climate change has brought about some long-term natural conditions in nature that make it impossible for people to grow and distribute food the way they have in the past. So there are just lots of places in the world where people are hungry. They just can't feed themselves, their children, or if they can barely feed themselves, that's all they can do. They can't pursue other human occupations because it takes everything they've got to come up with a little food day by day. So that need is still there, and MCC is still very interested in meeting that human need. You know, Jesus recognized that need in his teachings. He just told us plainly, flatly, bluntly, if somebody's hungry, feed them. Somebody asks you for food, give them some. He demonstrated that when he was around some hungry people, even though they were just hungry for one day because they had come to listen to his teachings, that somebody should give them some food before they had to walk a long way back home. So I think I don't think we have to work to stretch our theology and our beliefs to say it's our responsibility as Jesus followers to concern ourselves with people that are hungry. But another type of work that MCC does besides relief for immediate human needs is development. People who are opposing or trying to limit relief aid sometimes say, well, if you give them food, they're just gonna run out of food, you know, they're gonna be in deep water because they'll get hungry again. Well, there's some truth in that. But there also is an option for people who love others, that we can help people develop the ability to meet their own needs of hunger and other emergency needs. One way is by sharing technology that people don't have never had a chance to acquire, don't have the knowledge to set up, and to just go in with some technological offerings that set people up to be able to live and obtain the food that they need, the shelter that they need more efficiently. Another way is by giving people who exist through agriculture some help, some technological help. There's some things that are known in the 21st century that can be small changes that change the possibility of how much an individual, a small group like a village can produce to feed more people. Another way is to develop people through job training. We know in our own country, people's job opportunities change. The jobs that they have suddenly don't exist because they've been replaced with something else. And so that happens to people all over the world. And of course, we know in our own country, people who never have had adequate training to learn something that will get them a job where they can earn money, feed themselves. So job training is a long-term development strategy that MCC sometimes concerns itself with. Supporting people in the education that they already have, or introducing them to education that they don't have the opportunity for, is another way to develop people to be able to care for their needs. One thing that really excited me when I read about it was a model of savings and loan lending where people can get money that they can use either for their immediate needs or to develop their future by borrowing occasionally from a cooperative group that has been given just a small amount of financial assets. And then it is made available to people who want to borrow just a little bit for an emergency in their personal situation, for giving themselves a better opportunity to earn money. And so they get that small loan that gives them that first step toward being able to function. Another development strategy, which MCC seems to do very well because they're respected wherever they go, is to develop a model of helping that they promote and they finance at the beginning, but they start to communicate with the local government and say, you know, we're doing a small version of this, and this is our model, this is how it works. But we encourage you as a responsible government to serve your people by developing it on a much larger scale with the resources that you have. And so they're doing the strategy, the figuring out of how to do things. They're setting it up. They're making a working model that is efficient, and they can show it to parties that are able to expand it and replicate it. Another thing that MCC does besides relief is to look for any opportunity that exists for peacemaking. That's our value. That's what we believe. That's what we believe is loving God and loving our neighbor, is to create a better climate for peace wherever we can. And so they do small things and large things to promote peacemaking. Some of them, when you read about them, you think, I wonder if the first time an MCC person proposed this, people said, well, that's a little naive to think that that could promote peace in a region where people hate each other and are just standing by with weapons, getting ready for the next war. But when you look at those brave steps that are taken, often a few or many people are affected by people who will be courageous enough to believe in peace, to believe that peace is a better option than war to accomplish societal goals. This might be something small in a city in Syria where art opportunities are given for artists to gather from different social groups, share their art, communicate with each other. It might be trauma assistance after a time of war, just helping people get over the damage that has been done to their thinking and their understanding and their emotions so that they can go forward individually, not controlled by the trauma they've been through and moving on to the next violent option, but seeking peace. There are also a lot of projects that just group people together for different activities, but they're people from different groups in society that otherwise never know each other, never recognize the value in each other, never see the face of God in each other. But when they're grouped together for sports or some kind of a club, for whatever is of interest to them, they come to see people from that other group that they've always suspected or disliked or been judgmental of as human beings that they can communicate with, they can care about as they go forward in their lives. I think that we can see if we look across a range of MCC projects that besides relief, development, and peacemaking, MCC works for social change in many settings where it's needed. We have our own values as believers and as Mennonites about how societies should change, about what values they should operate by. So MCC forms service groups to encourage and train people to do things for others. This could be something as simple and local as a health club in one of the African countries, I can't remember which one, where boys are in this health club and one of their projects is to make and distribute and share menstrual products for girls and women, because the lack of those often makes it impossible for girls to go to school. That's the practical reason why females in their area can't go to school. And so this small service project that just recognizes the needs of others gives them a chance to care about somebody else's problems, to do something about it, to change their view of the value of Indians. I think the very way that MCC partners with other helping groups is a very visible cooperation that demonstrates to everybody who observes it that organizations that want to be helpers don't have to compete with each other for clients, don't have to compete with each other for glory and credit for what they do, don't have to compete with each other for funding. They can work together and greatly multiply what they do. And this is something that if you are familiar with charitable organizations, you know that people of integrity struggle with. They're trying to raise the money that their organization needs. My daughter is in that job and has worked as a fundraiser, a development person for many nonprofit organizations. And there's always that temptation in front of individuals to want to get their organization's needs a little bit above the other guys that are trying to do something similar so that they meet their fundraising goals. That's just a human problem that we have. And when MCC goes into new places, they look for the ones that they can partner with, that they can support. Sometimes they take a role of leadership because of their experience or their respect that has already been earned in that area. Sometimes they take a position of just providing feet, hands, and funds for what that other organization is better at and more stable in their efforts. So this alone, I think, brings about social change in a lot of places on the terms that that society operates. MCC has many projects that affect women's status in the societies where they live. I don't know what the other Christian entities in many of those places are preaching and teaching about how God looks at women or how human beings should look at women. But MCC has an innate respect for what women can do, what women do, what women should be helped to do to improve their status. And so many of their projects, a choice is made to directly offer assistance to elevate women's potential, women's leadership, women's freedom to lay aside the things that in their society keep them back from having decision-making power or the power even to care for their families. And that really is something that, you know, we can watch as observers play out. What happens? Does the society as a whole change because a woman in some village is given an opportunity that frees her up to be a full human partner in the needs of her society? We don't know yet if those things will happen, but one person at a time, one community at a time, we do see that happening through some MCC projects. And MCC also targets and centers the needs of marginalized people in different societies. For instance, the Roma population in European countries, what some people call gypsies, are very, very discriminated against, both officially and unofficially. And so an MCC project might choose to do something with that population to build up their potential, their opportunities, address their needs. MCC seems to recognize in many places mental health needs. I mean, they're helping people who have been through trauma. They're Many of their clients have been mistreated in life. Many of their clients work with, have life problems that are not respected by society, like being handicapped. And so, and of course, there are people groups which are discriminated against. And so, there are many mental health needs that they encounter. And they are, unlike some of those countries, and some would say our country is not sufficiently responsive to those kind of needs. MCC has shown an interest in that is not present in many places. Well, I want to tell you about a few specific places and projects that I learned about just in 2 or 3 of these little booklets, and that really address all of these areas of service. Of course, in Ukraine, there's been a terrible war. There's been terrible destruction. There's been terrible loss of everything, including life. And Ukraine, MCC already had some strong roots and relationships and respect in Ukraine. And so they had some opportunities to do some things after the during this time of war that's still going on. They did relief work, things like establishing heating centers next to some apartment complex that had received an airstrike and fallen apart. People had lost their homes. The building was falling down. They were still looking for survivors. It was cold, and so the first thing they needed was just a way to get warm. And so they set up heating centers where there was power to produce heat, possibly in a tent or any place that they could set up, and people could come and get warm. Pretty basic human need, isn't it? But just picture yourself. If your home was destroyed, you had to have some way to help your own children, and that's what you needed, was a way to get warm. So some of the things that they did was to set up immediate tent shelters, the quickest thing they could get up, to just get some families in there with something over their heads. Eventually, some of those would spread out to a restaurant or a hotel that they identified as someplace they could get hold of and move more people in, give more people shelter. They might not even have power in that building because so often the power was disrupted, but at least they had something over their heads. They, in one city, they partnered with a group called Fire of Prometi, and they provided those kinds of shelters. And when the people were in those shelters with just minimal living supports, they established some children's and family gatherings so that the kids would have something to do. Just picture having your kids in a place that was barely a roof over your head, no power, no light when it got dark, barely keeping them warm. And so it was a need to have some children's gatherings and some people who could entertain the kids and in some way make that moment of their lives a little more bearable. They kept a preschool going. There had already been a Roma two-room preschool available for some of the Roma children, and they lost their space, and so they kept them going, gave them shelter in that same hotel setting with local group called the Blaho Charitable Fund. And of course, they continually, just daily, made available food packages, relief kits, comforters. This is a big thing that Mennonites do, is send blankets and comforters. And one spokesman for the recipients of those said, it's not a small thing to just keep children warm with those homemade blankets and quilts. The colors and the hand work that's evident in them just gives them a message that somebody cares about them, that there's some place in the world where things can be better. Okay, another place where relief, development, and everything else was delivered was in Syria. You know, Syria was at war for 10 years. And then after that, they had an earthquake. And so buildings that were already cracked and in bad shape from the war were now completely untrustable to even walk in the streets, to walk past them. And so people's homes, any other building they depended on for work or any services were just in bad shape. The place was falling apart. So MCC kicked in with food, hygiene items, and diapers. I guess that's the big holy trinity of relief work, so that people would not be up a creek for those basic things. The ones who couldn't go back to where they had lived or find any other building that they could trust to be sheltered in were helped with shelter, someplace to just be indoors. And then, of course, people were massively traumatized. Kids who had heard the sounds of attack on the place where they lived, who had heard their mothers screaming in terror, were walking through that. We can picture how our children would be reacting to that. So that was an immediate need. It's some kind of help for trauma for both children and adults. Many people had no way to make a living anymore. If they were daily laborers, they don't have work. And so they continued to need the immediate food, shelter, the things that their work had provided in the past. If people were having to reorient their lives, of course they needed education for what kind of a job they could do next. The children needed their education reestablished. They needed ways to find new work that they could do in their present situation. And they needed peace programming. Because just imagine how much hate and anger and rage you might be filled with if that had happened to you. And you, as a citizen of that society, would just need some help to be thinking in terms of peace for the future. One thing that was developed in the same city where people were needing food and diapers and shelter was some people who did have that, but who just needed some hope. Just needed to connect with other human beings. And so there was an amazing MCC partner called Harmony, which originally was just a bunch of artists who knew one another. And they got together and they said, we've just got to express our hope for the future. We've just got to express something good in the middle of all this trauma. So they started getting together and were given a workspace and an exhibit space to just produce art of all kinds that helped people's emotional needs and also produced material that others could see for inspiration. Okay, the third place that I want to tell you about where MCC operated so beautifully was in the African country of Zimbabwe. And here, technology played a huge part in some opportunities that were given to women. I want one of you to take this book and look at the pictures of the tank, what looks like just a tank about that big around and about that high, cost $22 to produce, that actually serves as a stove that was made available to women to cook on. And the effect of that very small technological help, did I say it cost $22? And even that $22, they could be given help to get from a savings and loan association for their community, which had already been established and was available to them, from a nonprofit called SCORE Against Poverty. And when women received this, it saved them about 6 hours every couple of days of having to travel up the mountain to gather firewood, to cook food over a very inefficient open flame, smoky, dirty, and instead they could cook a meal in this stove. What a small thing to offer to somebody. $22 worth of cooking help. But it made such a difference in women's lives. They also were offered a biogas digester where they gathered poop and they processed it into gas and fertilizer. It provided power for their homes to have light. It provided better growing ability for the small crops that they planted. And they sometimes even had enough to share or sell to their neighbors. Another technological help that was aimed at this group of especially women in this society were some solar power systems. And we all know what solar power can accomplish. We go out and choose it and buy it and pay for it, and somebody comes and installs it. They were given the materials to install it themselves and to maintain it. And this made a huge difference in people having light and power in their homes. Not only did it improve their families' homes so much, but it gave them status in the community that they were able to do this. It freed them up, some of them, to actually do some work that brought cash assistance to their families. One woman saved time not having to go collect her firewood and cook her food so inefficiently. And it gave her the time to serve on the village council, where a woman had never been invited to serve before, to lead the local savings and loan association, which made these small micro loans available to others. and to make and sell some grass mats that brought some cash to her family. So let's just have the imagination to picture what a change that is. It's not a little change, is it? And what ripples may spread from that change. Many women who experienced this talked about how their daughters had the opportunity to observe what women could do, that they had been raised not to believe that they could do. In Zimbabwe, another imaginative group that MCC joined as a partner is called the Sandra Jones Center. And they recognized that women in their part of the world were just left helpless in certain situations. If they had a handicapped child, even their own family might throw them out. And they would be not only unable to help the child medically, but they would be homeless. So they took in at least one woman who had a child with a spine disability. They took in malnourished women who had been in some living situation where they just didn't have enough food to eat and were in terrible health. They took in women who had been abused by family members or others. And they brought them in to this center that just looked at each woman individually and said, okay, this woman is living in an unacceptable situation and has needs that can be partially supplied, or she can be directed to and prepared for, that will help her have the control to go forward with her life. So some of the women would stay for a short time, most would stay for a longer time. And in the Sandra Jones Center, wouldn't you love to know who Sandra Jones is? I didn't try to research that, but I'm going to. They received just a living space, a place to live that almost all of them needed. They were given nutritious food. They received any medical care that they or their children needed. The ones who were from a farming background were given training for more efficient and productive farming, and they operated a whole vegetable growing operation that fed the people there, gave them the experience to learn how to do that efficiently. They also were given life skills training, something that was appropriate to each woman, to her individual abilities, and Bible study. And one of the women expressed that the Bible study was a very serious part of her learning to value herself as a person and to believe with hope that she could carry on her life in the future. So that's what the Sandra Jones Center did. And they were already established at some level when MCC joined them as partners. Those are just a few kind of randomly chosen examples of specific things that MCC has found to do. When you think about such a range of operations, the way they are planned, the way their strategies are set up, the way they're supported, the skills that are needed just to carry them on day by day. Are you as amazed as I am that people in this ugly, wicked, hateful world that there are some people who have learned how to do this. They've learned how to make it work. And they have the heart to care that somebody around them needs it and to dedicate their lives to serving people with those kind of needs. Of course, we can find some of these needs in our own society, can't we? And we can join in efforts right here where we live to serve people. But to see it in another society where you have to understand a different set of circumstances, you have to learn a new language. You have to communicate with people on their terms of what they need and what they will accept and how you can be a part of it. To me, that's a beautiful picture of a special way that some people have learned to follow Jesus, follow in the ways of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So I'd like for us as a church to continue to care about MCC in the ways that we already have, but also to add to that some more knowledge of all the possibilities, all the wonderful things going on, and to contribute in any way we can, and to pray faithfully for. It can't be an easy job for people doing a hard job, and just join with them, just as a web in a worldwide community. Just try every way we can to discover how we can do a small part. Today, I wanted us to take an opportunity at the end of this to pray for the people and the efforts and the problems to be solved, and needs to be filled of the things that we have talked about. But I wanted us to especially center on the thing that maybe some of you are farther along in your knowledge than I am, but that I haven't really known about that much before, and that is who these partners are. Mm-hmm. Who are these people that we're choosing to work with and support and join hands with and humble ourselves and submit to work that they've already established and say, yeah, we'll support it. So I've asked Jamie if she would read the names of the partners that I've talked about in 3 different countries. And as she reads the names of the partners, just listen to them. We're not going to take a test later and see if we remembered them, what they did, but let's just take a moment to align ourselves with those wonderful people and just join in asking God's help and God's guidance and God's blessings on them. And as she reads the names of the partners in 3 different countries, I want us to do like we do when we're praying together as a community and just say, Lord, here are we there.
So we'll do this after I name each partner. So in the Ukraine, Fire of Promety,
Lord, hear our prayer.
Bleho Charitable Fund,
Lord, hear our prayer.
and in Syria, some of the unnamed in print for security reasons.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Harmony Cultural Forum,
Lord, hear our prayer.
in Zimbabwe, Score Against Poverty,
Lord, hear our prayer.
and the Sandra Jones Center.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Also, just to take the opportunity to mention that Columbia in the Seed Project is looking for young people to join them in their exchange. I call it exchange program that they're doing. So that's young people from I think age 19 to 29 are eligible to be a part of that 2-year program where they do political advocacy. And so if you know of any young people who are interested in that, you can talk to me, or you can go on the MCC website and look at the SEED program. If you know any high schoolers who are graduating soon, that might be something interesting for them. You know, church membership is important. It doesn't have to be Mennonite. So, yeah,
Thank you, Jane.
yeah.
I'm hoping that one of you is gonna walk back there when you leave and pick this up and take it home and look at it in more detail.
Mhm.
You'll see some pictures that a spoken message can't duplicate the pictures, and you'll read some first person statements of what people actually said. And so it's really worth looking at if you have that interest.
Growing up, the Free Baptist had no international relief efforts whatsoever. That's what makes me grateful for MCC. It was like, and I'll tell you why. The pretext was, this is so strange. I haven't thought of this person so long. Silver and gold have I none, but what I have, I think it's like Peter, like healing someone or something. But the idea was like any international efforts were salvation first. Would be unheard of to think about sending people out without some ulterior motive.
Mhm.
And I was bought and sold into that. Everything else was always like on the side. It's like you get a compassion child on the side.
Mhm.
We were almost like ashamed of it. The evangelical mission is what it's all about. There was one missionary in India. His name was Carlisle Hannah. And that ulterior motive, like it often was teaching English. But this guy, like grew rice and like was a whiz in agriculture. And it was super radical that he was a farmer missionary. That was radical because it was like, where's the ulterior motive? Like, I guess you can like talk to people about Jesus while you're
Planting
right, while you're planting rice. And it just blows my mind to think back to those days. So I'm very grateful for MCC. I know that Ben's got a soccer game before too long, but we definitely want to make opportunity for other thoughts or questions that you might have.
I know that Jene painted the real big picture, but I also just was thinking on a smaller scale how MCC has been really good about creating space for when you talked about marginalized groups. You know, I mean, I can't say on the bigger scale that MCC is the greatest, for example, at being all welcoming and inclusive, like with the LGBTQ community, but in terms of like on the smaller scale, like placing an LGBTQ person in a community that would be affirming to that person, they did that really well and very intentionally, you know. So that was something I remember and honor and respect. Another person that I knew with mental health issues who wanted to serve with MCC, and it was like not just, you know, generalized having trauma experiences, but an actual mental health diagnosis, and some people doubting and saying, oh, they can't serve with MCC in another country, they, you know, they have issues, right? And MCC saying, no, we believe in this person, and we know that if they have the proper support, they're going to be able to do it. And them finding the support, making sure that happened, and placing that person and having a successful placement. And so I'm just proud of the ways that they have worked for just different marginalized groups, even in service, um, has meant a lot to me. So just celebrated 20 years in Colombia. So talked to a friend on the phone who went to the celebration and was telling me a lot about how you see so many different people from different groups, with different opinions on how to do service, and how they were able to just welcome each other, and over the years the tensions are there, but they just kind of melted away in that space of celebration, of how they've been able to grow and build things together. So I'm excited about that too.
I always appreciate hearing about MCC, because I don't take a ton of my own time to look at what they do on a regular basis. Also, yeah, similar. I was thinking like, oh man, I don't remember ever hearing about this type of stuff in my church growing up. It was all just mission work, and then the mission to save people's souls work, not a mission of helping people. I mean, helping people with the byproduct, I guess, or a way to, yeah, it was the ulterior motive. But I suppose good work still got done. But I also was thinking, while we were singing these songs, I was like, there's some that we sing that I like transport me back to like the church I grew up in. Like when we sing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can almost feel like being and seeing like where I originally sang this song and what I originally thought or felt when I sang that song, either as a kid or a teenager. But when we were doing that, I'm pressing on the upward way. I was like, man, I was really glad. At first, I was like, oh, this song was just about who cares about the world? I'm going to heaven. And I was like, I don't want to sing this. Not that I mind the song. It was one of those songs that was like, I don't like those lyrics anymore. But then when we were singing it this time, I was like, actually, thank you, Aaron, because I was like, and the second, I mean, all the verses mean something different to me, I guess, after being a Joy for all these years. But my heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Some may dwell where these abound. My aim is higher ground. And I was thinking, that doesn't have to be about heaven. Like, like that's about like making the world better now. Like a higher mindset. Yeah, like I don't want things to be for people here. Like my aim is better than this. And that doesn't mean heaven. That means like something here better than this. Anyway, so now higher ground to me doesn't mean heaven ground. It's just something better here. Thank you for helping me reorient those lyrics to something that makes a difference to me now. So many of the spokesmen for MCC and these different things I read about just express that they do love God, and the way that they do it is caring love for people. It's just, for the company.
And the MCC story I kind of like is sports, and I'm a sports guy. 10 years ago, I know they had MCC helped. They joined, they partnered with someone else, but they formed a soccer league. Here's the rules though: 20 players on a team, 10 can be from Jewish background, but 10 must also be Palestinian. And they formed, one of the things they let the people do is they got them shoes and they could keep the uniform, but it was very popular and they had a whole big league. And I tried to keep following them, and I think it made a pretty big difference for that. You know, if your best players are, if you're Jewish and your best players are Palestinian, that on a sports team, that could make a difference and they'll be friends. I appreciate that. I don't know, I doubt it going on now, but it did for quite a long time.
They've used that model in a bunch of places.
Yes.
It's attractive to people, you know, and sometimes the people are desperately poor or um, they're lacking in resources or having any fun in life. It's a real need, but it's just an opportunity to group people together.
Like the English club, too, soccer clubs and English clubs.
MCC also has a Facebook page, and they have, one of the things I just saw on it was a short feature on the Sandra Jones Center.
Mm.
So look for MCC on Facebook, and you can get videos and a better picture of what it is they're trying to do.
You know, we name those organizations and we can sort of circle back to that spirit for joys and concerns.